The Murder of Julius Caesar, 1608. Did that headline get your attention? Today we're not talking about the assassination of Gaius Julius Caesar on the 15th of March 44 BC, but rather of Julius Caesar Jr. in January 1608. So put out of your mind the Ides of March, salads and difficult births, and get in the mood for some rough times. This video is going to be a little historical anecdote that takes place at the same time as some of the most famous fencing books were being published. It's interesting because it shines some light into how fencing was practiced by those authors' contemporaries, but also the sort of social setting that such fencing systems were developed in. Our tale starts in the middle of the 16th century, when a Venetian named Cesare Adalmare migrated to England and began practicing medicine. Sure, he was the son of a lawyer and had been to the University of Padua, but that didn't prevent him getting fined on the 20th of April 1554 for practicing medicine contrary to the laws of the realm. But he was admitted to the College of Physicians after an election a few days later. Now, at this time the head of England was Mary I, better known to students of horrible histories as Bloody Mary. Like all good Tudor monarchs, she was up to two things above all else: creating religious martyrs and failing to produce an heir. Mary I was a Catholic who had married the King of Spain, and in September of 1554 there was an incident when Mary went through a false pregnancy, which was a matter of huge international importance and left Mary depressed. Her husband Philip of Spain went abroad for a few years, but in 1557 she thought she was pregnant again. Instead, she died the next year from ovarian cysts or uterine cancer. I bring these up because those circumstances allowed a continental Catholic doctor to rise to the top of society, even if some of the Spanish suspected him of being an agent of the Pope or the Duke of Urbino. Cesare Adalmare not only attended Queen Mary I, but also her successor, Queen Elizabeth I. In the last year before her death, Queen Mary I made Cesare Adalmare a naturalised Englishman, and on one occasion paid him £100 for a single attendant, which was about 3 years' income for a skilled tradesman at the time. Cesare Adalmare died in 1569 in London, a very wealthy man. Cesare Adalmare had a bunch of children, who went on to have careers as lawyers, clergy and soldiers. The eldest was called Julius Caesar, later Sir Julius Caesar. What a sense of humour these guys had. Julius Caesar was born in 1557/8. Dating gets a bit weird because Catholics were adopting the Gregorian calendar around this time, while Protestants stuck to the old Julian one for a good while longer. Julius Caesar was born into high society. His baptism was sponsored by the Lord Treasurer, the Marquis of Winchester, the Earl of Arundel and Lady Montague representing Queen Mary I. Julius Caesar attended Oxford University, received a bachelor's in 1575 and a master's in 1578. He then did his Erasmus, studying law in Paris, where he received an LLB and LLD in 1581. A true Nepo baby. Julius Caesar immediately started climbing the career ladder, becoming the Commissioner on Piracy, cool job title, in October of that year. In 1583 he became Counsel to the City of London, and in 84 for a doctorate law degree from Oxford. Next he became a Judge of the High Court of Admiralty and an Advocate of Doctors' Commons, and then a Master in Chancery. I don't know what half of that means, but I do know that he got next elected as a Member of Parliament for Reigate in 1589. Reigate is a very picturesque little town in the South Downs, south of London, where my brother now teaches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at Memento Mori. Go check them out if you like competitive cuddling. Julius Caesar kept climbing the legal ladder, and in 1597 was elected MP for Windsor, getting re-elected in 1601. Queen Elizabeth visited him in 1598. Sadly, all heirless Tudors must eventually come to an end, and in 1603 Queen Elizabeth died. James Stuart, James VI of Scotland, thus inherited the English throne as James I. James was a very cosmopolitan person, letting his sons be educated in fencing by a French fencing master from 1604 to 6, Charles Guéraud, sent by the French ambassador. In 1605 James also hosted a tournament in Greenwich, organised by his brother-in-law the Duke of Holstein. Now I haven't worked out whether this was James's wife's brother, Christian IV of Denmark and also Duke of Holstein and Schleswig, or James's wife's sister's husband, Johann Adolf of Holstein-Gottorp. Christian IV definitely visited in 1606 when he enjoyed a big session on the beers and also employed Fabrice back in Denmark, but Johann Adolf's brother Jon Frederick of Holstein-Gottorp also employed Salvator Fabrice even before that. Anyway, I digress. James I and VI liked Julius Caesar enough to knight him Sir Julius as soon as he arrived in town. Sir Julius Caesar next gets elected MP for Middlesex and becomes the Chancellor under Treasurer for the Exchequer from 1606 to 14 and a Privy Councillor from 1607. For those of you who don't follow British history, that means it was about as important a government minister as you could be without being born owning a huge chunk of the country. Sir Julius married 3 times and fathered many children. Being a modest man, he named his firstborn son Julius Caesar too. Julius Caesar Jr. was born on the 14th of February 1587 and was sent to Padua to study at the university there. This is when the 20-year-old young man met his sticky end. Padua was a university town governed by Venice, one of the oldest universities in the world. Padua had recently inaugurated the first purpose-built anatomical theatre for medical students. Galileo was teaching mathematics there until 1610, and it was common for the English elite to travel overseas for education, and Julius Caesar Jr.'s contemporaries, or near contemporaries, include the anatomists William Harvey and George Ent, and the physician Thomas Brown. In 1608, the year of Julius Jr.'s arrival, a military academy was also opened, the Academia Delia. Such schools were all the rage at the time. The statutes of the academy provided for a horse-riding master and a fencing master, and after a discussion, decided to recruit also a mathematician. Academic institutions at the start of the 17th century often employed fencing instructors, as it was an expected part of a young gentleman's education. For example, Capoferro, 1610, was the fencing master for the German nation at the University of Siena, a nation who recommended Vincenzo Vanarelli for a job in 1629. This tracks with what Gaiani, 1619, has to say on the subject of decent fencing masters in Italy, which is that only a few get good through long practice, and those that do are usually in university cities, where the stream of foreigners passing through gives them the opportunity to refine their fencing. As usual, England was behind the times, mind, and in 1597-8, Cambridge University fined 3 different people for giving fencing lessons. Now, on to our murder. On the 20th of January 1608, the English ambassador to Venice sends his secretary to see the Venetian cabinet, as he had a winter cold. The secretary says that a young English student at the university had visited a fencing school for his amusement 4 days earlier, on the 16th of January. He had beaten one of the students of the school and was about to leave with several other Englishmen when the master of the school challenged him to a bout. The master then set upon him, swearing away, and hurt the English student's hand. Rather than apologise, the master and his students armed themselves and murdered the English student. The student had tried to defend himself, but had slipped on some ice and had been stabbed with a dagger. Instead of facing justice, the fencing master then went and hid in a church. Now, the Venetian Doge fobs the secretary off with some niceties, but the question comes back 3 days later. No update, and so the ambassador's secretary was back again on the 25th of January. Now, Venetians tell him that this case is very different to the one that he presented at first. An inquiry was underway by the chief magistrate, and they say that our English student, Julius Caesar Jr., did indeed fence with Tommaso Bracetta of Padua. They agreed that JC had been wounded on his hand, but at that point he had left the school in a rage, threatening to kill his opponent unless he received an apology. Bracetta left as well, but was fired upon with a pistol, which missed him, at which point he drew his sword and killed the Englishman. The English secretary admitted that the Englishman had a pistol, but not that he fired it. Instead, the secretary claims that JC Jr. dropped it and it went off, as proven by 3 holes in the Englishman's cloak. Furthermore, he admitted that it's hard to defend a young man carrying a pistol on the streets of Padua. There's then some pleasantries about the funeral for young Julius Caesar Jr. The Catholics didn't want to handle the body of a Calvinist, so the chief magistrate had ordered he be given a state funeral. We have some notes from the chief magistrate, or podesta, which informed the Venetian cabinet. Now, the English students in Padua aren't happy with this explanation, and the following week, that is the 28th of January, they were complaining to the chief magistrate about its findings, and that the suspect should be brought to justice. The chief magistrate says that they've done everything within their legal power, and that once the English accusations are proven, justice will be done. The English also complained that the body had been disinterred by Catholic clergy at night. The next day, the Venetian cabinet forwarded this on to the English ambassador, who was invited to attend the cabinet in a few days, on the 1st of February 1608. Amongst other items of business, they discuss an Englishman who was supplying black powder weapons to the Pope. The English ambassador regretted that pistols weren't part of the deal, to which the Doge made a pointed comment about pistols. They're too dangerous because they can be carried hidden. The ambassador took this as a reference to the murder of Julius Caesar Jr. in Padua a month before, and replied that, though a little too full of youth, he was a good lad of high promise. The English ambassador admitted that the chief magistrate had done all they could for the English, and was sure justice would be done. The next day, the chief magistrate wrote that the English students and their ambassador had been begging him to arrest Bruschetta and charge him with homicide, but that the accused didn't want to surrender to the court, but to send his father in his stead, a right known as per patrum. This wasn't enough, because by the end of the month the ambassador was still demanding the immediate arrest of the fencing master Bartolomeo Tagliaferro and his pupil Antonio Bruschetta. He claimed that a certain people of Venetia were sheltering them. The cabinet secretary felt that there was some truth to this, because they commanded such terror and respect in Padua that no witnesses would grouse on them. He therefore asked for a chief magistrate to hold an inquiry behind closed doors. At the same time, that is on the 28th of February, the Venetian ambassador in England wrote back home. He offered his personal condolences to Sir Julius Caesar Sr., and had put it in a way that emphasised the error and rashness of his son, Julius Caesar Jr. The father didn't deny the excessive vivacity of his son, and said that he hoped some time overseas would have mellowed him out. There is then quiet for a month. The English ambassador in Venice presents the thanks of Julius Caesar Sr., and the Doge says that no news has been received as things have been taking their natural course. A few days later, a new chief magistrate in Padua provided a summary of the case. He said that at Bartolomeo Tagliaferro's fencing school, the Englishman beat Bruschetta. JC Jr. put down his arms, but Bruschetta challenged him to a rematch. Bruschetta then, in violation of the rules, hit Julius Caesar Jr. on his left hand, wounding the Englishman. The wounded man threw his dagger at Bruschetta, but had missed. The foul here is interesting because it tracks with what Gaiani 1619 has to say about fencing bouts between masters, that is, that it was customary to only admit the first hit and timely response, but they must be made with the point, not with cuts. Anyway, hearing the ruckus, Tagliaferro, the fencing master, comes out from the neighbouring room. Learning what had happened, he told the English to go away and not come back. Julius Caesar Jr. left and found an English doctor who staunched the flow of blood from his hand with great difficulty. The next morning, Caesar left his house with a sword and pistol, and went to the university buildings where Tagliaferro had his house. He met Bruschetta, who was leaving with a sword and buckler. Caesar aimed and shot at him, but missed, and tried to draw his sword, but fell. At that point, Bruschetta rushed him and stabbed him to death. The Englishman could only take 2 steps before he was dead. As for Tagliaferro, it's alleged that he shouted, "Give it him!" encouraging Bruschetta to attack when Julius Caesar Jr. fell. The new chief magistrate admits some problems with this account. The Englishman's cloak did have 2 holes burnt in it, and 2 witnesses swear that the pistol went off under it. In legal terms, Bruschetta is allowed to have his father attend the trial in his stead, and the English nation at the university is very put out. He asks that the Doge recalls that permission in order to oblige the English ambassador. By the 8th of April, we find out that the Doge has granted a new trial with secret witnesses, and that per patrum has been revoked for the killer. They say that this is all that can be done. It is now for justice to be done fairly. It seems that nothing came of this retrial, but there is one final note to the story. In October, over 9 months since the killing, the English ambassador returned from a journey. He said that in Brescia one of his party had been taken ill. Not too dangerous, but their doctor suspected poison. The Englishman said, "I do not doubt that this is an outcome of the affair at Padua and may be traced to the fencing master." The Doge remarked that it might be some other sickness, for poison was usually violent and rapid. The ambassador said that there were slow poisons, however, it is best to presume the lesser evil. So that wraps up the story. It's interesting to see how someone died because of an offence taken at breaking the social conventions in a fencing hall. It's also interesting to see how justice seems to have been done more about politics than right and wrong. Thankfully, we no longer live in a world where it's acceptable to seek violent revenge to perceived slights, because we have structures in place to address injurious behaviour by bad losers. But let's also look at the story critically. The tale I've told is from the records of the Venetian government, rather than the English nation at the university. There's some questions of where the fencing school was. I've seen reference that Tagliaferro was a teacher at the Accademia Delia 3 decades before Alfieri taught there, with one fencing instructor in between. Hi, it's Mike from the future here, so I've been able to do a little bit more digging while making this video, and it seems that the fencing master Tagliaferro was only appointed to the Accademia Delia a couple of years after this incident took place. Which is kind of wild, right? One of his students murdered the son of a foreign privy councillor, and yet he's still awarded the position at this institution with a salary of 130 ducats. What is clear is that teaching fencing to entitled young men must have been an absolute nightmare. The next time you look at Girolamo Cavalcabo, bear in mind that some of the things that he put up with from his student, the future Louis XIII. On the 20th of March 1609, the Dauphin broke his fencing sword's blade by the hilt, trying to surprise his master with a forehand blow. Fortunately, Cavalcabo parried on that occasion, but on the 4th of May the Dauphin received corporal punishment, in part because he had hit Cavalcabo in the eye whilst the fencing master tried to correct the prince's footwork. Only a few days later, the French king was assassinated, and the little brat became the King of France. Now, most of us aren't about to become king, so please treat your fellow fencers with decency. For more information on the justice system of Venice and how it gave rise to a culture of duelling, I'd recommend Claudio Pavolo's The Public Rock of Cut Heads, Violence and Banditry in the Mediterranean, Republic of Venice in the 16th Century.